So Jeff, I think it's time. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Perfect. Then let's start it up. Welcome to all of you to the Tech Talk series. This is episode, I think, number 6. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it is 6. I don't think we've done 7 yet. So 6 is a good number. Let's go with that.
So as I know that you are Mr. Jeff, let's have a quick introduction of ourselves. I will start with myself today. I'm Fredrik Brattstig, tech evangelist at IGEL, based in Sweden, works globally more or less. And my friend Jeff here is.
And I am Jeff Kullberg, technology evangelist, been with IGEL for many years, based in Cincinnati, Ohio, and cover feels like the rest of the world as well.
Yeah,
as a team.
Sounds good. Yeah, we are one of the smallest teams at IGEL, actually.
I think so.
But we are part of the Alliances team too, so we have a few friends.
Yes.
So Jeff, what happened a week ago? I believe that we were looking at the registry of the end computing IGEL OS powered RX 420 and the Citrix characteristics on how to modify WF client, module.ini, and all of those things, right?
Correct. You know, it was really a lot of focus on the inner workings, some of the more complicated, more hidden settings, if you will, that are available for the Workspace app. And wanted to point out to people that you have full access to all of those settings in IGEL setup, which is the primary interface for configuring a device, whether or not it's on the device or using the IGEL management system. So
correct, and there is a lot of goodies to find within those within the registry and all of those files, especially if you want to do a very specific tweaking, then it's a good place to start.
Absolutely.
And I will announce that this is the end.
Well, it's not the end for today's
episode. Not of today's episode, but for this season. So due to that I'm based in Sweden, I will take a 2.5-year summer break, more or less, at least 6 weeks, I think. Yeah. So we will start up again somewhere in, who knows?
Maybe late fall.
Yeah.
With a whole new series. So if anybody has any topics or anything that they'd like to see us cover in a series or in season number 2, by all means, send us an email, post something in the chat, and we'll consider it for sure.
Exactly. And I mean, season 1 has been all about the uncomputing stuff.
That's correct.
I would say that we might actually open up for anything IGEL. So let's see where it goes.
Yep.
But now for today. So today is all about the extras. So the hidden stuff, or not really hidden, but maybe unknown stuff. We'll look at update service, which is a new feature. We'll have a look at corporate branding, how to actually make the user interface to change shape. We will have a look at custom partitions and maybe something else if we find the time for it. But Jeff, we start off by the update service, which is actually an idea that you and me have been discussing for quite some time, and delivered a small blueprint to our development for this specific device or operating system, which are now implemented. Can you describe this? Because you are, as always, the brain behind all of it. So.
Oh, no, that's not true. That's absolutely not true. So yeah, it's been a topic of discussion for a while between Fredrik and I, and that was the fact that as more people move their workloads to the cloud, whether it be a corporate internal cloud or the public cloud, and as people became more mobile, and especially when people started working at home, it became clear that updating devices, from a corporate update resource was becoming complicated. We didn't have access. We didn't know if the users needed to be able to delay updates, update on their own schedule, really needed to start treating the update process like we might treat the updating of our phones, for example. So anyway, what we did is we proposed that we go ahead and create this update service. A service is being something that runs on the IGEL device, where the actual IGEL operating system would update automatically from a cloud resource maintained by IGEL. So, and this is in IGEL OS for the RX 420. And we'll be rolling this out in our Intel-based product as well. But to configure it, what you've seen so far is when you boot your device, when you first got it, if there was an available firmware, if you have a RX 420 device, and you booted it and the first time it booted, it would have gone out and checked to see if there was newer firmware available. And it would tell you there was newer firmware. Do you want to update now? You could always cancel that, but you would be prompted again the next time the device was booted. And that was reaching out to a cloud service that we maintained. It's an Azure blob, one's and we maintained in EMEA and the other one's in the United States. And we go out and we test. And if there's a newer version available, you'll get that prompt. Once you've updated, you don't see the prompt anymore until there's a newer version posted. But this service is fully configurable, and you have to access that in the IGEL registry. When you go into that IGEL registry, there's a section called Update, and under Update, there's a section called Service, and this is where this is configured. First option I think I'd tell you about is where it says Enable. And if you click on Enable, you see that this services update is enabled by default, okay, when the operating system ships. If you turn this off, it'll no longer check for updates when we post new updates or make a newer firmware version available to you. Okay, but so we would encourage you to go ahead and leave this active if you want. I also share this. If you were to bring a device under management with the IGEL management system and you associate a firmware version with the firmware profile, if you will, an update profile with the device, okay, the management system will override any kind of configuration settings that you have here. We won't use this update service at all. It won't run if you have a managed device and you've associated an update profile with the device. But with respect to configuring this, think about like the work-at-home user, right? They're working, they might be working at odd hours. You just don't know, and you really can't say schedule an update and interrupt their work. So the idea was that we go ahead and provide them this update when they boot the device by default, but we don't have to do that. There's an option here called interval. If you go down to the interval, it's just a place here where you can set an hour count, okay? And if you say, make this a 1, what'll happen is the IGEL device will check for newer firmware every hour. As soon as a new firmware is posted, okay, they would get the user would get a message on the screen saying, hey, there's an update. Do you want to install it now? I don't think anybody would do that every hour. They might do it every 6 hours. They might do it every 24 hours. You might do it every 72 hours or every 144 hours, or how many ever hours there are in a month. You could set that value as well. The point being, we'll check for an update during on that interval. And again, the user would only be prompted for an update if something was available. So if they do that, and there is something available, we didn't necessarily want all devices to update at the same time. If we had a remote office, 10 users, we didn't necessarily want all 10 users updating at exactly the same time. So we introduced a little randomizer that would delay the start of the update, okay, based on some randomizer. So 15 minutes says, hey, we'll pick a time within 15 minutes of the hour, okay, to go ahead and kick off update on a device. So somebody might put in 30, which would be, or 45 minutes, and it'll pick some time after the scheduled hour to run. So we also have the maximum number of delays. This is an option here where I might go in and say, okay, I want an update. Okay, when there's an update available, I want the user to be prompted. I'm going to go ahead and let the user delay the update 10 times, 30 times, 20 times, whatever number you picked. Okay, you'd allow you to go in here and set this. If there's a 0 here, okay, that's basically unlimited. That's the default setting. So every time the message would pop up, they could cancel it and cancel it and cancel it and cancel it. They're never forced to do an update. Again, kind of going back to how phones might work or Windows might work. Now, we also recognize the fact that some people would like to maintain their own update server. So we have this update server that we're maintaining, but if somebody wanted to have their own update server, or for security reasons, or for whatever reason they felt the need to have their own server, we let you define your own update resource. It just needs to be laid out the way we need to see it. So, and obviously that's a feature that's here as well. There is a user dialog. What you experience so far is that message pops up, you have to close the message, right? But you can go ahead and put a variable in here of 20 seconds or 30 seconds or 60 seconds, whatever. That message about updating will pop up, and then it'll do a little countdown, then the message would disappear. So these are a lot of options around here. Version allows you to lock in on a particular version of the IGEL firmware. So if you do nothing here, it's going to update to the current. We're going to post the most current publicly available versions of IGEL OS, and that's what will be the default. So when we release 1101.120, which is the next version of the firmware for the RX 420, as soon as we make that available, we'll put that in the current bucket, if you will, and that's what will happen on this device. But you could lock in to a particular version if you wanted to do that as well. Now, recognizing that us in the United States may not want to update off of servers in Europe and vice versa, what we decided to do was add a little zone in here. And there's a little, we run GeoIP on here, which lets us know how a particular device is, what country that device is operating from, or at least where it's connected to the internet. With that information, we're able to determine whether or not someone is if they're in the US, Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico, the US or British Virgin Islands. Okay, we're going to update off of servers that are in the United States. If you're any other country, we're going to update off of servers in Europe. We have an ability here. You'll see from time to time this %. And what happens when you click on that zone %, for example, you can add an instance. So if Frederick clicks on add an instance, that'll actually add a new server zone in here, and you could put your own codes in and point to your own server. This allows us to pick new servers or set up new additional update services around the world if we wanted to. Okay, and then finally, while we will not password our, the IGEL updates themselves are freely downloadable. So we don't secure those with a password, but there is an opportunity here for username and an encrypted password, okay, that allows somebody to actually update off of a resource that's protected by username and password. So if you set up your own resource and you wanted to secure that with username and password, you could do that. And so that's a little overview of the update service that we've created. It seems to work pretty reliably, and it allows us to keep control over updating. So like you said, if you're managing it and you want to update it yourself using the old methods, you can do that. Or if you have work at home users and you just want to leverage this, let those devices update when they can. I think it works pretty good. So that being said, I think one of the things that's great interest to people is this whole area of customizations, Frederick.
Yeah.
I know, I go back to when I first started working with IGEL, we just released IGEL Linux 3. So it's quite different than what it looks like today. One of the things that we did is we offered a lot of customizations around some wallpapers and a few other things. I wouldn't say a lot, just basic customizations. But that very quickly became very complicated to maintain. And when we introduced IGEL Linux 4, we came up with this idea of custom branding and letting people put their own wallpapers on devices. Well, that's expanded quite a bit. And we always think it's very interesting for people to see what you can do to make an IGEL device be your own. And so why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about that and how that works?
Exactly. Thank you, Jeff, for the walkthrough of the update service. It's a start of a new era, actually, for IGEL. I like it. So let's have a look at the firmware customizations that we can do. We can, of course, through the UMS, control the device user interface in terms of replacing the wallpaper, replacing the start menu button, change how the taskbar looks. Of course, we can move the taskbar around and so on by using UMS profiles. So I have actually prepared a small demo, so to speak. So this device that you see here, I will now move this device to a folder that is called UI customization. And let's see what it does and talk about the different pieces when it's moved. I will do this now. So this is the UMS for you that maybe do not know. This is the UMS. I just drag and drop a device on the directory. This could be hundreds of devices. Now I just move the device and I apply the change immediately. So hopefully this device is starting to work, making its back work on the backside and trying to get the wallpaper downloaded and some other things.
One of the things is this is going through, the management system is kind of key. It's a little difficult to do this without the management system. Otherwise, you have to copy a lot of files and things off of USB sticks, and it's just you could do it, but
it could be done, but it's not fun.
Yeah.
So as you see, it changed the shape a bit. So what I did now is I replaced the wallpaper and I added a Disrupt Unite wallpaper. I changed the layout of the taskbar. So this is actually now replaced by an image, which I was drawing this afternoon. I'm very proud. We also changed the start menu button to an end computing device. And I also decided to, I cannot click in this window, so I need to go over here. I also decided to change the icon for, there is an IGEL logo here in regular cases, and I changed this one to end computing logo, because this is a joint collaboration between IGEL and Uncompute, so it makes sense. It's basically just imagination that stops you from doing whatever you want to do.
A lot of very functional things. I think if you go back to the management system, one thing that very early on, and we've had a number of people ask about this, is this whole section up here where it says firmware customization. This is where a little higher up, right there at the front of that, this is where we would upload or add wallpapers to the IGEL management system for further deployment. But there's all sorts of use cases here. So when Frederick said, okay, I've got a start button, I want to change that start button, he would have uploaded the start button. Same thing with taskbar background and things like that. Okay, and add those to the management system. But two areas that I think, well, three areas, I guess. One is if on the screensaver, we have different kinds of screensavers. So the basic screensaver, if we don't, what you have today, if you let the screensaver kick in, you get the IGEL kind of icon bouncing around the screen. Well, that's easily changed. You could upload a different image file if you wanted to. Again, you change the display mode from small hopping versus big hopping, how often the icon should move around and different things like that. Okay. And then you can control start times and such and set the background color. Something that's really interesting, this kind of came in out of healthcare and retail, were two areas where people said, hey, I'd like to be able to, if the device is not being used, it is generally public facing, I'd like to be able to put a wallpaper up there or a screensaver that is almost a screenshot or whatever, a series of graphics that change on the screen, and fill the entire screen. So we basically said, let's take the screensaver concept and let's have multiple images, okay, and store in multiple images, and then let's rotate through those images. So I used to go out and I'd take like a company's corporate icon and I'd have an IGEL icon and I put them both in here and then they would rotate one to the other and one to the other. It was pretty cool. But if somebody had 3 or 4, actually Citrix has this, they had like 7 images and we uploaded all those images, okay, and into IGEL OS, and those images rotate through the IGEL screen when that screensaver kicks in. And they're full screen. Actually, I think we're showing them on like quarter screens, but they're moving around. So it made it a little even cooler. But every screen's a full image and a message, wash your hands, wear your mask, whatever. So, but it's a powerful feature, and a lot of people don't know this exists, but it's very useful depending on the industry. And I think you also had, well, there's also pretty much self-explanatory. There was also the boot splash option.
Yeah.
For that few minutes that the boot splash is on the screen, you can put your own boot splash up there.
Exactly. So instead of the IGEL wheel, so to speak, you could add whatever, and it can actually be animated. So
yeah,
that's cool. And I think it covers customization quite well. You just start playing with it, or at least have the understanding that it can be done, and then go from there. So
I think, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
In the early days, it was the wallpaper, right?
Yep.
And at the time, we could make a connection to Citrix. We can make a connection to Windows Terminal Services using RDP. I think we had at the time, it might have been Mozilla. That was the browser that was on IGEL. But we quickly learned that we can provide all these services, these capabilities to connect to something, but still we could never cover everything, and people are always going to need something new and something different. So we started thinking about, well, gee, if we could do the wallpaper and the boot splash and some of these other things, why couldn't we do the same thing if somebody has an application? So what did we decide to do?
So we decided to implement the functionality that is called custom partitions, where we have a rule set of how to create the application. I mean, the IGEL OS is a read-only operating system. But if you follow the correct rules, you are able to add software to the device. There are numerous examples, but let me show you one example. Based on the directory structure here, you might already understand what I am about to do. So I am about to install one of those custom partitions on this device. So I will drag and drop the device to a different directory and hit apply. I will do this immediately and go back to my device. And it's updating the custom partition. So let's see what happens. So we all know that the RX420 powered by IGEL is pure Citrix and browser today, right? So it will
correct.
But
if somebody came along and they said, gee, I want some other kind of browser, I want some other functionality. Now, the first question might be, well, does it run on, ARM, I suppose.
In this case,
but they could come to us, or they may ask the question, is there a way to install something else like you're just showing us here? And there we go.
So we got a new icon that is called X3 RDP. So let's see what that icon does. It actually, if everything is with me, it should, yeah. So it kicked off a RDP session. And what's actually quite interesting is that this custom partition supports hardware floating and anything. So it's a very slim application, but it works perfectly fine. So if you want access to your RDP, RDS servers, this is the way to go.
Let me ask you a question. And people are probably wondering this. Is so now you've put this on here. Won't it mess up my IGEL OS? I mean, I had an operating system that I could count on, and now you've introduced something different that has changed it.
It is a custom partition, of course. Within the custom partition, you can actually, in runtime, change stuff to the originating IGEL OS. But if you follow the rules, it should be quite straightforward.
So I guess the point is what I was trying to think about is we tell people this is a read-only operating system. We followed the rules. We've added this new application to the device. But the way these custom partitions work, we install them in a special place on the IGEL operating system. It's still inside the IGEL file system, which is a compressed secure operating system. But we have a routine then, essentially we run a script that maps the new application into IGEL OS. And if I ever wanted to but we really don't, because remember, IGEL OS runs in RAM, it doesn't run off a disk. So we load everything into RAM, we then layer this new application onto the operating system. We can use it if the application doesn't work, or if it creates problems in other areas. Simply removing that custom partition will return the IGEL to the state it was before you added it. You really never hurt the operating system at all. I think you went in here into the IGEL operating system itself, and you changed into a directory called custom, which is where we deploy custom applications or custom firmware customizations, if we would call them, not branding customizations. But inside here, we've got that file called custom part x3 RDP ARM64. That's just a bash script. I think this taking that x3 RDP application and mapping it into IGEL OS, right?
Yeah.
If somebody's a big bash scripter, you could take a look at this. It basically walks through, and we essentially are creating a bunch of symlinks, for the application itself, okay, and mapping it into the core IGEL OS so that it sits and behaves like someone we would expect. But again, all of it's done in RAM. So remove that script, remove the custom partition, and we're back to the beginning. And we could try something different.
Exactly. It's a very neat feature to be able to add stuff to the read-only operating system.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
if you look at read-only Windows-based devices, it's often quite a mess because you need to unlock the write filter, reboot the device, do your changes, reboot the device, apply the write filter again, reboot the device, and you're good to go. And it takes about 200 hours to install Notepad. Here it's 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and you're up and running.
Yeah, right. So true, so true. I like some of the comments here. Make sure you don't fill up the storage, though. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you had a device that had, for the sake of argument, 4 gig, you're not going to be able to create a custom partition that's, well, you can create a good sized one, but here at IGEL, we get a little carried away. I think I've got 6 or 7 applications that I've added to my device. So I have a custom partition I created that's about 1.5 gig in size, but I also have a lot more storage than would typically be on an IGEL OS device. But if you converted a PC, you can make a pretty substantial one. I have a key thing is, it is a secured area, and anyway, so we've got ARM not covered in IGEL Community GitHub. Yeah. Yes, it does follow the same rules, looking at the chat.
Exactly. And what David is talking about, IGEL Community GitHub is actually a GitHub repository where IGEL community members can upload and discuss or provide blueprints of custom partitions. Custom partitions are always, there is also one thing to take in consideration in terms of custom partitions, what we as IGEL can distribute. We cannot distribute copyrighted software.
Right.
So the software needs to be under the GPL or all one of them at least. But what the GitHub piece is actually has done is to create a skeleton script, more or less, which will allow you to download more or less automatically, download the binaries or the deb files that you need, and then kick off the script, and you will have the customization done and ready.
Correct. And there are and companies that are out there that have put together packages specific for the platform behind the RX 420, which would be the Raspberry Pi 4. There are those that are out there that actually have packages for Linux that are like that. Can be a good starting point. Trying to think of some of them. Can't think of any off the top. The only one I can think of off the top of my head is No Machine, but I know there are others out there as well.
Yeah.
So.
And in terms of other stuff you could run on IGEL OS, I would say also on the ARM, depending on support from AppImage. But AppImage, like, should we say it's like AppV packages?
So app images are a unique, actually they're very cool, but someone who owns a piece of software can build an app image. You have to build it, basically I think build them more or less from source, but it becomes a single file, okay? And then you can just copy that file over to a Linux device, or it'd be similar to a portable executable that in the Windows world. It's all self-contained. You don't install it. You just make that file executable, and that file contains everything necessary to run the application. So all the supporting libraries, every bit of it. They take up a lot more space, but app images by themselves are quite useful. So I like Balena Etcher, for example. They have some app images. So if you wanted to create a bootable USB stick from an ISO, and you can download the Balena Etcher app image and make it executable and just run it. There's a on the REST interface. There's a client, I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. Insomnia is a really good REST application, if you will, that you can use, and it has an app image. You can download Insomnia as an app image and just run it. So you could deploy those to the custom partition and just make them executable, just run them. There is no unpacking, there is no anything, it just is the file. To the extent that it needs to create some working files in, say, temp or in user home, it'll do that. But in both cases, those files, those working files would be gone when the device reboots.
Correct. So my conclusion would be that the read-only operating system, IGEL OS, is very dynamic and modifiable.
Which is why we love it so much.
Yes.
It's always a challenge of new and different things to do.
Certainly.
So we are 5 minutes over. I don't know. There's been some good chat here. I think we've kind of discussed about all of the GitHub and the custom directory and some other things. I suppose this is it. You go on vacation for 6 weeks?
Yes, and trying to enjoy the sunlight, which is rare here in Sweden. So,
especially this time of year, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this season. If you've managed to make it to all 6 episodes, we certainly appreciate that. And if you missed anything, they're all posted online. Go back and listen to them.
Yeah.
We'll go into syndication and get some extra money. You never know. I doubt it, but and we'll be back in the fall.
Yeah. Thank you, all of you, for listening in. And thank you, Jeff, of course.
Thank you, Frederick.
It's always a pleasure. Yeah. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye, everyone.